Friends, let us gather not merely as listeners, but as seekers. Let us set our feet upon a dusty path that winds through centuries and continents, a path that leads us to a question whispered across time. Are the great movements of the Igbo people of West Africa a distant echo of that most foundational of journeys, the Exodus of Israel? Or are we, in our longing for connection, hearing melodies where there is only the wind of coincidence? Tonight, we shall not rush to an answer. Instead, we shall walk this historical ground together, examining the stones, listening to the echoes, and perhaps discovering something profound about memory, identity, and the human spirit's quest for a promised land. Our journey begins in the ancient world, along the eastern shores of the Mediterranean. There, a narrative was forged in the furnace of oppression that would forever shape human understanding of liberation. The children of Israel, bound in servitude in Egypt, cried out. And through a series of profound events, they were led out across a parted sea into a wilderness of testing and toward a land of covenant. This story is not merely a historical account. It is an archetype. It is the story of a people chosen, tested, and led, whose identity becomes inseparable from the journey itself, from slavery to freedom, through suffering to purpose. The Exodus is a pillar of collective memory, a narrative so powerful that countless peoples, in their own moments of trial and migration, have seen their own reflection in its waters. Now, let us cross vast deserts and seas to the rich, green landscapes of West Africa, to the world of the Igbo. The Igbo people possess a vibrant and complex history, one marked by a spirit of enterprise, republican ideals, and a profound sense of individuality balanced with community. Their own traditions and emerging scholarly insights speak of migrations. Oral histories and cultural analysis suggest movements from earlier homelands, possibly to the east or north, into their present heartland in southeastern Nigeria. These were not a single dramatic flight, but rather waves of expansion, of clan groups seeking new frontiers, fertile lands, and spaces for their dynamic societal structures. They faced challenges, adapted to new environments, and built civilizations like the renowned kingdom of Sinai, a spiritual and political force rooted in divine ritual and social harmony. When we place these two narratives side by side, the parallels begin to shimmer, and it is here that our question takes flight. Some have looked upon these Igbo migrations and seen a reflection of the Exodus. Both stories are central to the people's sense of self. For Israel, the Exodus is the defining moment of nationhood. For many Igbo communities, the memory of migration is etched into origin stories, into the maps of kinship and clan. Both journeys were movements toward a promised fulfillment. For Israel, a land flowing with milk and honey. For the Igbo, a land of opportunity, a place to plant their FOG tree and have it flourish. We find fascinating cultural threads. The Igbo have a deep-seated concept of being a chosen people, not in a sense of superiority, but of unique purpose and covenant with a high god, Chukwu. Their traditional religious practices, with an emphasis on individual conscience, moral accountability, and a system of taboo that protects the sanctity of the community and the land, invite comparison with Mosaic law. The Igbo ideal of the self, made individual, rising through personal achievement and wisdom, resonates with the biblical emphasis on personal righteousness. And then there is the experience of the 20th century, which cast the Igbo in a role that felt heartbreakingly Exodus-like. The catastrophic events of the Nigerian Civil War, known as the Biafran War, saw the Igbo as a people besieged, suffering immensely, and yearning for a deliverance that, for many, was embodied in the dream of Biafra, a promised land of safety and self-determination. This modern exodus of displacement and hunger seemed to tragically mirror ancient themes of persecution and a desperate quest for a homeland. With these parallels laid before us, the temptation is strong to connect the dots into a single divine line, to proclaim that the Igbo are, in some literal, historical sense, a lost tribe of Israel. This theory has been proposed, and it captures the imagination. But true historical inquiry, like true faith, must be brave enough to ask harder questions. It must consider the power of coincidence and the deeper workings of the human mind. Scholars of history and anthropology offer a compelling alternative, the concept of convergent evolution. Just as wings developed independently in birds, bats, and insects to solve the problem of flight, so too can similar cultural and historical narratives arise independently in different peoples to solve the fundamental human problems of identity, trauma, and destiny. The story of a people journeying from hardship to a better place is not unique, it is universal. It is the story of the Pilgrims, the Great Trek of the Boers, the Mormon Trail, the Cherokee Trail of Tears. It is, in essence, the story of humanity. What we may be witnessing is not a direct historical lineage, but the shared grammar of human experience. The archetype of the Exodus is powerful precisely because it gives shape and meaning to the universal experiences of suffering, hope, and the search for belonging. The Igbo, through their own very real and unique historical journeys, lived out a narrative that naturally resonates with this archetype. Their traditions and their recent history created a story so potent that it instinctively speaks the same spiritual language as the Israelite Exodus. This is not a diminishment of their story, it is an elevation of it to the realm of universal human truth. Furthermore, the rich tapestry of Igbo culture is profoundly and distinctly African. Its roots are deep in the soil of the continent, in the veneration of ancestors, in the masquerade traditions that link the worlds of the living and the spirits, in the intricate democratic assemblies of the Ohanese and of Umwada. To insist on a solely Levantine origin risks overshadowing the magnificent, self-sufficient genius of African civilization. The Igbo cosmological vision, with its balance between Eala and the human community, is a complete and sophisticated system that stands on its own monumental foundations. So, what then are we to conclude? Were the Igbo migrations an echo of Israel's exodus? In a literal historical sense, the evidence leans heavily toward viewing them as independent masterpieces within the grand gallery of human history. But if we listen with our spirits, not just our scholarly minds, we hear something extraordinary. We hear that the echo is real, but its source is not a single historical event bouncing across continents. The source is the human heart itself, the heart that yearns for freedom from Pharaoh's bondage, whether that Pharaoh wears a crown of gold or one of prejudice and war. The heart that trusts in a promise seen only with the eyes of faith. The heart that makes a covenant with its God and its community to build a just society in a new land. This is the heart that beat in the chest of an Israelite standing on the shores of the Red Sea, And it is the same heart that beat in the chest of an Igbo elder leading his people to a new settlement in the forests of Nigeria. It beat in the chest of a Biafran child dreaming of peace. Therefore, the connection is not one of bloodline, but of heartbeat. It is a theological and phenomenological kinship. The Igbo experience does not need to be a chapter from the Bible to be sacred. It is sacred. It is their own exodus, their own covenant, their own testament to the resilience of a people who understand in their very bones what it means to journey with purpose. Let us leave here tonight, then, not with a simple yes or no, but with a deepened awe. The story of the Igbo stands as a mighty testament in its own right. It is a West African testament of journey, covenant, and identity. And in its profound themes, it joins a glorious chorus of human narratives, from the Israelites to the countless other peoples of the earth, all singing the same eternal song, a song of captivity and deliverance, of wilderness and promise, of a longing for a Zion, an Allah, a home. That song is not a coincidence. It is the echo of the divine image within humanity, forever restless, forever seeking, forever journeying toward its truest promised land. Igbo commerce proved that wealth can be built without a throne, because for centuries the Igbo merchant system functioned without the luxuries of centralized kingship, imperial authority, or hereditary aristocracy, yet it still achieved remarkable influence through sheer ingenuity, discipline, and community-based economics that allowed ordinary individuals to rise through merit rather than bloodline. Their success teaches us that true prosperity does not depend on grand palaces, royal decrees, or inherited privilege, but on the quality of human relationships, the strength of trade networks, and the fairness of agreements, showing that a man or woman with vision can build wealth not by dominating others, but by earning trust and providing value. Igbo markets were built on principles of negotiation, mobility, and integrity, where reputation was currency and partnership was the backbone of expansion, enabling traders to move through regions where they had no armies, no castles, and no political domination, yet they were welcomed because they understood the greatest secret of commerce, that people trade not with titles, but with reliability. The Igbo merchant believed that opportunity could be created even in the absence of state power, because they saw that in the marketplace, hierarchy means little if one cannot deliver goods, meet demands, or maintain consistent trade relationships. Their system demonstrates that economic success thrives in environments where individuals can rise through hard work rather than waiting for approval from elites, meaning that ambition and innovation became the true keys to influence. The Igbo built wealth through distributed networks instead of centralized power, proving that a society without a king could foster entrepreneurs, sailors, craftsmen, and long-distance traders who shaped regional economies. This teaches the modern world that progress does not always come from monumental structures or grand rulers, but from the collective ability of ordinary people to organize, negotiate, and adapt. In a world today where many feel locked out of opportunity by class, privilege, or systemic inequality, the Igbo example announces boldly that achievement is still possible when people invest in education, cooperation, and self-determination rather than waiting for permission from authority. The Igbo merchant tradition shows that trade can be a form of empowerment, that networks can replace armies, and that influence can grow from relationships instead of conquest. The remarkable thing is that this success was built under difficult conditions, lacking large empires, facing colonial interference, and operating in decentralized communities, yet they rose through strategy and resilience rather than domination. They mastered the art of understanding demand, reading markets, and adapting goods, moving palm oil, crafts, textiles, and agricultural products across long distances while building trust so strong that deals could occur without written contracts. Their guilds and associations acted as systems of accountability, ensuring fairness while protecting traders from exploitation. In this, they proved that economic power can be organized horizontally instead of vertically, allowing many to benefit rather than concentrating wealth in a few hands. This stands in contrast to societies where wealth remained tied to lineage or aristocracy, revealing that the absence of a throne can enable a culture of opportunity rather than limit it. Modern entrepreneurs can learn from this legacy. That innovation is born from necessity, that adaptability beats entitlement, and that resilience matters more than background. The Igbo merchant legacy is not only a historical achievement, it is a blueprint for any community that seeks to rise despite lacking political control, showing that influence can be constructed through trade ethics, discipline, and community networks. Their journey reminds us that economic dignity is possible when value is created and shared, and that individuals can transform their destinies without needing a crown to validate their worth. It challenges the narrative that power must precede wealth by demonstrating that sometimes wealth builds power, not the other way around. More importantly, it reinforces that freedom in commerce allows talent to flourish, and that societies built on participation rather than dominance can produce entrepreneurs and visionaries capable of shaping regions. Igbo merchants reveal that power earned through trust lasts longer than power seized by force, that reputation outlives conquest, and that networks outgrow empires, offering lessons for modern Africa and the world about inclusive growth and community-driven prosperity. Their history inspires anyone who feels unseen or underestimated, because it proves that greatness can come from the grassroots, that success can rise from the marketplace rather than the palace, and that ordinary individuals, through shared vision and persistent effort, can build wealth that transforms entire societies. Let us embark on a contemplative journey between two mountains, not of stone and earth, but of spirit and covenant. One is Sinai, stark and awe, inspiring in the desert, where the air itself was said to thicken with the presence of the divine, and a law was given that would forever define a people. The other is not a single peak, but the very soil of Egbaland, a land personified and sanctified as Allah, the earth goddess, from whom flows fertility, morality, and the bedrock of societal order. To move from Sinai to Allah is to traverse a vast expanse of geography and tradition, yet to arrive at a strikingly similar destination. The understanding that a people's deepest identity is forged in a sacred pact, and that this covenant is inextricably bound to a specific, promised land. The covenant at Sinai was a monumental transaction of identity. A gathered multitude, recently escaped from the crucible of Egyptian bondage, was transformed into a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. This was not merely a political or ethnic designation, it was a theological rebirth. Their laws, the intricate codes of Deuteronomy and Leviticus, were not just societal regulations, but the detailed terms of a relationship. To obey was to maintain communion. To transgress was to break faith. The law covered every sphere: how to worship, how to farm, how to adjudicate disputes, how to treat the stranger. It was a totalizing system that made holiness tangible, weaving the divine into the daily fabric of life. The sign of this covenant was the land of Canaan itself, a gift conditional upon their fidelity. The land would vomit them out if they defiled it, for it was not a passive territory, but a sacred trust, a stage upon which their covenant with Yahweh was to be performed. Now let us turn our gaze to the world of Allah. In Igbo cosmology, the earth is not inert dirt. It is a divine feminine force, a source of all life, and the ultimate judge of morality. Allah is the womb of fertility for crops and children, and she is also the stern guardian of truth and order. The covenant here is not etched on tablets of stone delivered from a thunderous mountain, but it is woven into the very landscape, understood through the wisdom of ancestors and the revelations of divination. The terms of this covenant are embodied in the concept of Nenso Allah, the taboos of the land. These are not arbitrary superstitions, but a profound ecological and moral code. They dictate how land is used, how waste is disposed, how conflicts are resolved, and what acts constitute an abomination. A crime, like murder or theft, is not just an offense against a person. It is a pollution of Allah, a violation of the sacred covenant that sustains the community. The earth goddess must be appeased through ritual and restitution to restore balance. Here, the law is not a list from above, but a truth emerging from below, from the sacred soil itself. This brings us to the profound parallel in the conception of the promised land. For both peoples, the land is far more than real estate. It is the physical manifestation of destiny, the tangible proof of a covenant fulfilled. For Israel, Canaan was the sworn inheritance to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the end point of the Exodus, flowing with milk and honey. Its hills and valleys were the chapters of their history, from Jericho to Jerusalem. To lose the land through exile was not just a geopolitical disaster. It was a theological crisis, a seeming rupture in the covenant itself. In the Igbo imagination, the achieved homeland, won through those centuries of migration and settlement, holds a similar sacred charge. It is the realm of Allah. Every forest grove, every river, every village square is imbued with spiritual presence. The land is mapped not just by geography, but by history and myth. This is where our founder planted his staff. This stream is where the oracle spoke. This ancient tree marks the boundary our ancestors secured. The land promises sustenance, but it also demands responsibility. It is a reciprocal relationship. Allah provides fertility, and the people maintain her purity through right conduct and ritual. To be in right relationship with the land is to have identity, security, and meaning. To be severed from it, as during the dispossessions of the colonial era or the desperate flight of the Biafran War, was a spiritual catastrophe as much as a physical one, a tearing from the source of one's very being. Thus, the quest for a promised land is revealed as a quest for a completed identity. Both cultures understand that a people cannot fully be who they are meant to be in a state of rootless wandering. They must be planted. The covenant, whether delivered from Sinai or arising from Allah, provides the spiritual and legal DNA, the instruction for how to be. But the land provides the place to be it. It is the laboratory where the covenant is tested, lived and fulfilled. It turns abstract principles into concrete reality. Justice is enacted in its gates. Harvest festivals celebrate its yield, and its boundaries define the community of the faithful. The powerful Igbo concept of Ofo and Eogu, the symbols of ancestral authority and moral innocence, further deepens this comparison. Holding the Ofo staff is to hold the collective conscience and justice of the lineage, a direct link to the ancestors who themselves upheld the covenant with the land. This is not dissimilar from the role of the Levitical priests or the Israelite judges, who were custodians of the law and mediators of the covenant, ensuring the community's actions aligned with divine will. In both systems, leadership is intimately tied to upholding the sacred pact that binds people, divinity, and land together. Ultimately, to journey from Sinai to Allah is to witness two great civilizations, articulating the same profound truth in different sacred languages. One heard the covenant in the thunder and the written word, the other felt it in the fertility of the soil and the voice of the ancestors. One received a law to sanctify a land, the other recognized a land that demanded a holy law. Their quests were convergent paths to the same realization that human identity, at its most profound and enduring, is a tripartite bond. It is a covenant with the divine, a commitment to a moral order, and an inseparable connection to a specific piece of the earth that is both gift and responsibility. This is the promise that beckoned from Canaan, and that resonates in the spirit of Igboland. Not merely a territory to possess, but a sacred space in which to become, fully and faithfully, who you were meant to be. Consider the great migrations that have written themselves across the pages of our world, the trails etched not by rivers, but by human feet driven by hope, desperation, or destiny. The Israelites crossing the Sinai, the Bantu expansions, the Anglo-Saxon settlement of Britain, the Mongol thrusts across the steppe, the flight of the pilgrims, the Cherokee Trail of Tears, the Igbo movements into their forested homeland. When we lay these narratives side by side, a pattern of seeming coincidence emerges. Stories of departure from hardship, perilous passages, and the yearning for a land of promise. It is tempting, then, to draw direct lines, to construct theories of lost tribes and hidden historical connections, as with the captivating idea of Igbo, Israelite links. But to stop there is to perhaps miss the deeper, more resonant truth. The true connection is not a thread of historical causation linking one specific event to another, but rather a shared pulse, a common heartbeat of the human spirit that animates these journeys across time and space. Our task is to learn to distinguish between the fascinating but often illusory coincidences of specific detail and the profound, universal human truths that make these stories feel so familiar, so necessary to souls who have never set foot on those particular paths. Coincidence in history is the realm of the superficial parallel, the mirrored symbol that lacks a foundational connection. It is the discovery of similar ritual objects, linguistic turns of phrase that sound alike, or flood myths in disparate cultures. These can be beguiling, offering the satisfying click of a puzzle piece fitting into place. Scholars rightly approach such parallels with rigorous skepticism, demanding evidence of contact trade or shared origin before declaring a historical link. The material record, the carbon-dated artifact, the deciphered inscription, these are the tools that separate documented influence from imaginative association. To claim a direct historical lineage between, for instance, the Levant and the Niger Basin requires a chain of evidence that can bear the weight of scrutiny. Often, that chain does not exist, and what remains is a collection of intriguing, but ultimately coincidental resemblances, the kind that emerge when different peoples confront similar human needs for harvest, for justice, for explaining the stars, and arrive at similar, yet independent, solutions. But if we ascend from the level of artifact and specific event to the level of human experience, something more significant comes into view. This is the realm of shared human truth, which operates not on the principle of historical causation, but on the principle of phenomenological kinship. It is the understanding that certain experiences are so fundamental to the human condition that they generate similar stories, similar archetypes, and similar cultural frameworks, regardless of time or place. The longing for freedom from oppression is one such truth, the transformative ordeal of a journey through a wilderness, be it a desert, an ocean, or a socio-political chaos, is another. The imperative to forge a new identity after a rupture, and to root that identity in a covenant with each other and with the divine, is a third. These are not historical coincidences, they are the deep, repeating rhythms of our collective story. This is where we locate the true heartbeat. It is the pulse felt in the chest of an enslaved individual in Egypt dreaming of a God who hears groans, and in the chest of an Igbo clansman in a time of scarcity or conflict, consulting an oracle and deciding to lead his people to a new frontier where the Oji tree might flourish. It is the same rhythm that quickened the heart of a Puritan dissenter boarding this Mayflower, seeing in the vast, terrifying Atlantic not just a barrier, but a pathway to a city upon a hill. The specific pharaohs differ. They may wear the double crown of Egypt, the regalia of a hostile neighboring kingdom, or the crown of religious persecution. The specific wildernesses differ. They may be sand, forest, or sea, but the core experience of moving best from a condition of constriction toward a horizon of possibility is a universal chord. This shared truth is what makes the Igbo narrative of migration and covenant with Allah not a derivative copy of the Exodus, but a powerful, standalone masterpiece in the epic of human becoming. Their experience validates the archetype through its own unique authenticity. They did not need the story of Sinai to understand what it meant to receive a law that binds community to land. Their own interaction with the sacred earth goddess provided that framework. They did not need the concept of a chosen people from an ancient text. Their own vigorous sense of individual and collective destiny, their Vei-Chi, and their historical resilience forged that self-conception. Their journey is a West African verse in the global poem of migration, and its power lies in its particularity. The specific masquerades that guide, the specific Ofo staff that symbolizes justice, the specific rhythms of the Ikwe drum that communicated across villages. Therefore, to hear the heartbeat of history is to listen diagnostically. It is to move past the tantalizing but often deceptive surface symptoms of coincidence and to feel for the vital, thriving organ beneath, the human spirit itself in its enduring quest. This quest has a tripartite rhythm: the recognition of bondage, the courage of departure, and the faithful labor of building a promised land. Every great migration story, in its essence, is a variation on this triune beat. When we understand this, The question shifts from, did this people directly descend from or imitate that one? To the more profound inquiry, what does this people's unique expression of this universal journey reveal about the breadth and depth of human aspiration? The Igbo experience does not borrow sacredness from the Hebrew story. It contributes its own sacred testimony to the world's understanding of what it means to be a people on a purposeful journey. Their history declares that the ache for a homeland, the need for a covenant that gives meaning to community, and the resilience to traverse a wilderness are not the copyrighted possessions of one culture, but the shared inheritance of humanity. In the end, the migrations of the world are not isolated, coincidental events. They are individual heartbeats within the larger, living body of human history. Each has its own strength, its own timber, its own story to tell. But together they form a steady, recognizable pulse, a testament to our perennial refusal to be defined solely by our suffering, our relentless drive to seek a horizon, and our profound need to weave our lives into a story of exodus and arrival, of covenant and promise. That pulse is the true connection. It is the sound of our shared human truth, echoing far louder and deeper than any mere coincidence ever could.